And not until you wake up, not until you take the dream out of dreamland and bring it into the waking world, do you turn to it and go, oh my God, that was weird.
Hi and welcome. Today's guest is an internationally recognized clinical psychologist in integrative sleep and dream medicine. His clients range from Fortune 500 CEOs to world-class athletes and rock and roll bands. Who knew they slept? And he's the author of Healing Night, Healthy Sleep, The Yoga of Sleep, To Sleep Tonight, and now a fifth book out, which we'll learn about later on. Dr. Rubin Naiman, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure, thanks.
The team was very intrigued with your life story that you grew up in a farm in South Jersey, and now you are in the business of sleep. Is there a connection there?
I imagine there is. There's something about nature that I think invites sleep. Most of us today think about sleep as being sort of personal, discrete experiences. I do mine, other people do theirs. But a lot of my work today is also looking on the social context of sleep, and that includes the environment. So I think where we sleep is critical. And there's something about being in nature that induces sleep.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Another interesting part about your story is that you started university to become a rabbi, and now here you are. Was there a pivotal event in your life that changed that, or do you see them as connected somehow?
I think sometimes we talk about being a psychologist as being sort of a secular clergyman. I think there's a lot of overlap. I've always had a deep interest in spirituality. That hasn't changed. And in particular, I think I'm really fortunate to work in the arena of sleep and dreams. This is work that really, beyond all the clinical issues, is about consciousness. And consciousness is a fascinating and a tricky subject, one that most people don't think about. It has really interesting implications for brain research, for other kinds of hard scientific research, but also it's fascinating me for years that the word consciousness has no plural.
So when you work with clients, and along these lines of consciousness and, like you said, being a secular clergyman, do you find that most of your clients are experiencing issues in that realm, or are sleep issues primarily elsewhere?
I think both. In fact, I think one of the big problems and one of the failures in how we are addressing sleep issues clinically today is around a concept called medicalization. So medicalization refers to taking a natural experience and sort of yanking it into the structure of healthcare. And the best example of that is pregnancy and childbirth. So years ago, pregnancy and childbirth were medicalized. If you were pregnant and were about to have a baby, you had to see a doctor on a regular basis. You would inevitably be ushered into a hospital at that time for a surgical procedure. It was a medical issue. And then came the natural childbirth movement, excuse me, which I think was an essential counter to the over-medicalization of childbirth. And we need a natural sleep movement today, because sleep is not simply about turning one's mind off or turning one's body off. There's a profound, deeply personal, and I would say, and in my new work, I talk about the spiritual aspects of sleeping and dreaming. So we need the clinical perspective, and we need everything we've learned in terms of clinical management of sleep. But what's missing for so many people, and my clients get this a lot, is a reframe of this as a deeply personal, spiritual experience.
With so many people having sleep issues, what do you think the main culprit is? Are they not reaching out for help? Are they not making efforts? Or do we just have the wrong idea?
I think we have a lot of the right ideas. I think we do a lot of the right things, but they're necessary but not sufficient. And I think the pieces that are missing are really understanding what sleep is. So I was just speaking about we don't get sleep because we don't get sleep. And it's not meant to be cutesy. We really need to get a personal sense of what sleep is. And there's nothing in our world, there's nothing in the world of science or psychology that answers that question. We have a lot of data and a lot of pieces of the puzzle, but in the end, there's no image that forms, even when we put those together. When we look at sacred writings about sleep and dreams, writings that come out of Kabbalah, writings that come out of Hindu traditions, Tibetan Buddhist traditions, and on, it's really clear that there's a shared universal spiritual sense that sleep is serenity. Sleep is inner peace. And there's something very beautiful about that. Many of us are on spiritual paths, and we engage in spiritual practices. Day by day, we meditate or do yoga or do a number of things that take us toward better health and deeper spirituality. I like this notion because I think of sleep as the lazy aspirant's path to enlightenment. In fact, the Dalai Lama once said sleep was the best meditation.
So in our conversation right now, we're on this path of sleep associated with spirituality. Is sleep cultural too?
I think culture provides a framework for how the nature of sleep is experienced in different places around the globe. There are some indigenous cultures where people sleep in very unusual ways. In fact, much like a bunch of kittens or puppies, they'll pile up on each other. There's also really good evidence from historical data showing that prior to the Industrial Revolution, everybody woke up at night. People just got up at night. We have this sort of sanitized notion of sleeping through the night. You know, when we have kids, we want them to sleep through the night, and we expect we're going to sleep through the night. And what happens then is with that expectation, when people experience even the slightest waking consciousness in the middle of the night, they go, oh, damn, you know, I need an Ambien.
Yeah,
it's like
something must be wrong.
Something is wrong, yeah. So it's a problem. The evidence is that people were up for an hour or two in the middle of the night, and it was considered a sacred time. People sometimes they'd make sandwiches, sometimes they'd make love, sometimes they'd contemplate or meditate or pray. There's some evidence that sometimes you'd light candles at night, and your neighbors would come in and actually get into bed with you, which we practiced in California in the 70s, but it had a different feeling. So yes, sleep can appear very differently in different cultures, and I think it's a little too processed in our world, and it's a little too artificial, meaning it's driven by pot and sleeping pills and substances.
A very common association with sleep is dreaming, and this is also a big part of your business. So
yeah.
Please.
It's very, very important.
I know it's a big world.
One of the challenges in the world today is we think of dreaming as a stepchild of sleep. So I'm a member of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, and I want them to be the American Academy of Sleep and Dream Medicine. There's common acceptance of the fact that there are three kinds of consciousness, fundamental consciousness. There's waking, sleeping, and dreaming. But dreaming gets dropped back to this. Sleep doesn't get the status it needs either, but dreaming is behind that. And we are, as a culture, at least as dream deprived as we are sleep deprived. The many lifestyle factors significantly suppress dreaming. And I also believe that dreams, in addition to being personal, they emerge from the collective unconscious. And so I think this is having a really detrimental impact on consciousness. We are losing our dreams. In fact, I think it's the single most overlooked factor in clinical depression today. I think it suppresses creativity, particularly in children who don't dream well. And I think it results in people living these sort of mired lives. Dreaming expands consciousness. It takes the frame, the blinders off, if you will, and we begin to live in a world that's bigger and richer and deeper. And the presence of the dream at night is required for us to have a sense of that expansive dreaming consciousness by day. So when we don't dream well at night, we're not dreaming well in our waking lives.
So is it possible to encourage yourself to dream more?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's funny, sometimes just talking about it reminds us, because there's a part in each of us, in our hearts, where we know the dream and we're hungry for it. Thinking about it. Also, a very simple technique for remembering dreams is waking up slowly. what we call grogginess in our world is interesting. The word groggy comes from the English rum drink, grog, which implies it's drunkenness. And it's a fascinating reflection of where our culture is, because when we awaken in the morning, we're coming up out of dream consciousness. We're partly asleep, we're partly dreaming and partly awake. It's a really exquisite hybrid. It's sort of this lush coastal zone of consciousness. And we dismiss it. We say, I'm groggy, and get some coffee or throw water on your face. But the technique is to linger in that space for 4 or 5 minutes, and what happens is that images, bubbles will arise with the experience of the dream. So then the next step is to record the dream, write it down, talk to a bed partner about it, connect that dream world, bridge the dream world to the waking world, and do that on a regular basis, and you find the worlds start to merge again.
And dreams are quite literal. I found when I'm explaining my dreams, like it doesn't make sense when it's in my head, but when I'm saying it out loud, and then I realize the words I chose to describe it, I just described something else. Is that common, that dreams can be very literal?
They can be very literal. They're, dreaming like waking has a range of experiences, but most of us make a mistake in trying to understand dreams. We work on understanding dreams the way it's sort of like we pull a fish out of water and put it on dry land and say, my God, that's weird. We pull the dream out of the dream world. And so, you have a dream that you're having this great conversation with this Cambridge-educated green squirrel on a cruise ship over dinner. And, this guy's got a great background in Nietzsche, really smart squirrel. And you're having this really profound conversation. And it's cool. And not until you wake up, not until you take the dream out of dreamland and bring it into the waking world, do you turn to it and go, oh my God, that was weird. It wasn't weird in that space. And so the mindset that can experience something like that and not judge it is really one of the greatest gifts that dreaming gives us.
I love sleep and I love dreams. This is a personal pleasure. All right, everybody, if you would like to see more interviews by Integrative Nutrition's visiting teachers, please subscribe, and thanks for watching.
Health doesn't happen in the doctor's office, right? Health happens in your kitchen.